Hello again. In the last segment of Armageddon Now, Dwight Wilson is dealing with the controversy over the land after Allenby and the British Army conquered Jerusalem in 1917 from the Turks. Who is going to own this land? And that here we are 100 years later, and that debate is hotter than ever. And specifically, the issue of what about the Temple Mount? While the Mosque of Omar, the Dome of the Rock, or the Mosque El-Aqsa is there, can the Temple of the Jews be rebuilt? Because there is a movement among Orthodox Jews to rebuild the third temple, to build the third temple, to rebuild the temple. And Wilson takes up that point here, along with this question of immediacy. Rumors of the impending destruction of the Mosque of Omar, Dome of the Rock, or the Mosque El-Aqsa, and the rebuilding of the temple continue to crop up. The Biola Journal reported the publication of a Jewish catechism in London, which said that whenever the Jews returned to their land and again constituted a state, a temple would be built and the sacrificial laws restored. The reporter commented that the scriptures clearly teach that the Jews will return in unbelief, but that they will have a new temple and reestablish temple sacrifices. The necessary destruction of the Arab center of worship, the Mosque of Omar, was referred to in a classic understatement as a delicate problem, unquote. It was noted that, quote, the Jews can hardly be expected to take steps to restore the temple on the chosen site until they have a majority in Palestine, end of quote. Another apparently serious speculation was that an alliance of the Masons and the Jews might rebuild the temple, since the Masons claimed that their order was founded by King Solomon at the building of his temple. The Jews' expectation of an imminent rebuilding was duly reported. There's the report of the time. Chief Rabbi Kook, or Kook, K-U-K, actually spelled K-O-O-K, Chief Rabbi Kook of Jerusalem has announced that a new yeshiva will be founded yeshiva will be founded in the holy city for the purpose of instructing men of priestly and Levitic parentage in their duties in the temple. This includes formulas of sacrifices, etc. The rabbi believes this to be an urgent necessity, since he perceives the rebuilding of the temple as near at hand. An author in the or I guess that's pronounced Evangel magazine, exulted in the news that repairs on the mosque had been halted because the Muslims could not produce a title deed to the property. He called it a wonderful thing and interpreted the event as a significant indication that God has wrested Palestine from Islam. Another writer, a lady evangelist, expanded the report, and she said, the temple is to be rebuilt. We understand that the Jews are hoping to return to the Levitical sacrifices in the near future. End of quote. She did not find it surprising that no title deed to the Dome of the Rock had been found. She then recounted how, in giving a prophetic message recently in an evangelistic campaign, she had held up the Bible and said, the promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the land title to the temple site. The Evangel editor, writing on signs of the approaching end, reported a rabbi as saying, the Mosque of Omar will be torn down soon, and a wonderful temple like Solomon's will be built there. A Jewish writer was quoted on the significance of rebuilding the temple. Quote, the Jewish national home cannot be complete without it, and I would go even further and say that Palestine will never be flourishing until the temple building is fully established in all its ancient glory. Another article, The Sure Word of Prophecy, cited press dispatches from Jerusalem reporting that permission was being sought by zealous Jews to build altars at the temple site and restore the sacrifices, and that prospective priests were already suspected of practicing ritual sacrifice. This blatant anti-mosque attitude was just one example of a generally anti-Arab disposition held by most premillenarians. This antipathy was not derived from any hatred of the Arabs themselves or of their actions, but simply was inherent in the premillenarians' view of biblical restorationism. They did have perhaps somewhat of a tragic sense about these unfortunates, who just happened to be descendants of Israel's twin brother Esau, who had sold his birthright to his younger twin. But God had said, I hated Esau, Malachi 1 verse 3. And since Esau's descendants opposed the restoration of God's chosen people, it was predestined that they would just have to suffer the consequences. Another view held that the Arabs were the descendants of Ishmael, Abraham's illegitimate son, who, not being the promised heir of the land God had given Abraham, had been cast out. The development of this anti-Arab antagonism can be observed throughout the 20s and has continued down to the present. In 1922, following Arab protests in Palestine and London concerning the implementation of the Balfour Declaration, the Evangel carried a reprint of an article from another journal, Morning Star, which contained a letter written to a rabbi. The author of the letter encouraged the rabbi to take comfort from Jeremiah 31, verse 10. He that scattered Israel will gather him, and commented, He is gathering him, and the enemies of the Jews cannot hinder it. The King's Business, another magazine of the time, reflected the view that the Arabs would quiet down once they began to share the beneficial results of Jewish industrial enterprise. It was stated that the Arabs would not suffer any hardship whatsoever from the restoration of the Jews because, after all, they still had the whole of Arabia with its 1 million square miles, and in addition all the land that had been freed from the Turks. The Arabs were only nomads who had created neither material nor spiritual values in the land. By the way, this has been restated very recently by, again, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Arabs were only nomads who had created neither material nor spiritual values in the land, according to this claim. In keeping with this view, Lord Shaftesbury was quoted, Give the country without a people to the people without a country. One article, citing a missionary to Palestine, writing in the Jewish Missionary Herald, even reflected a blanket prejudice. He said, The poor Arab, what has he? The Turk has robbed him even of his character. What could the Zionists rob him of? The charge that the Jew is robbing the Arab is absolutely false. End of quote. Thus, some premillenarians continue to hold the naive view that desertion by the Turks had left Palestine a great vacuum that was sucking the Jews back by some inevitable law of nature. Many never even considered the question of the justice or injustice of the Jews replacing or overpowering the native. Arab existence was completely ignored. We haven't solved that problem. I've got a link here to our Babylon the Great series, specifically the third of the recent series of 6 videos on Babylon the Great in the Revelation and the New Testament as a whole. 12 references to Babylon in the New Testament, 6 of them in Revelation. The third one, though, is on the fact I had not ever noticed before I did my own concordance research, that the name of the 2 most prominent cities to the early Christians, for the early Christians, are not even in the book of Revelation, namely the name Rome and the name Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem is mentioned at the end of time, as it were, the end of the millennium, but the present city of Jerusalem, which of course was the city, the mother city of ancient Christianity, and of course of Judaism, the central city, that city is not mentioned by name, nor is Rome. So are they not in the book of Revelation, or are they hiding somewhere? So the third video in the new series, the third of the 6, is on Revelation 11. The city where our Lord was crucified is the description of that city, which again is unnamed. So the third video I'll put on your screen, but also the playlist. The total playlist of Babylon videos is now, I think, 29 altogether. See you soon.